Today my guest is Brian Sherwin. Brian, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really enjoying the Central Ohio Day of .NET.
It's great. It's always great to be out here and just kind of seeing everybody, see what's going on.
Seeing all the technology.
Yep.
Seeing all the friends.
Yep.
What's your job? What do you do?
I'm an independent consultant, and I work for anybody and everybody, but my focus is on .NET, largely because I feel that companies need to focus on value, and the value that I bring to the table is I'm good at one thing, and that's .NET.
Yeah. Let's continue the conversation we had earlier. You were talking about refactoring project, you didn't use the word spaghetti code, but I was thinking that as you were saying. But a legacy application that had been built over many years that was causing problems, and you came into an organization and helped to refactor that. Tell me about that.
Yeah. This application was built around, it started off in DOS, and they had been working on it for, I guess, 15 or 20 years.
Just building on top of code, on top of code, on top of code.
Code on top of code, yep. It's a packaged software product, so you always have customers, and they always want something new and the latest and greatest. And sometimes you don't always have a chance to go back and fix what you've got, so you kind of just keep piling on. And sometimes you don't even have developers that were trained developers. They were just kind of people that lucked into the position, and they just kind of carry that baggage from one iteration to the next.
Okay, so those are some of the reasons why this code kind of got to be tightly coupled in a lot of places.
Yeah.
What were some of the problems? Just describe some of the issues.
So the biggest problem was just the coupling was so tight that just doing something like opening a form, the form load would connect to 5 business layer sections. And they had good layers that they had read about, but it would connect to these layers, and then those layers would make all these connections to the database. And so just opening up a form did all this other stuff, and there was really no way to stop and say, hey, I want to test this one piece and make sure this one piece works. So we had a couple hundred tests that ran over 4 or 5 hours, just really slow. So we didn't run them very often.
4 or 5 hours just running unit tests?
Yeah.
Wow.
I wouldn't call them unit tests. I'd call them integration tests.
Okay, they're automated tests, though.
Yeah, automated tests.
So people just stop running them, so they're useless. If your tests aren't being run, you've got 0% code coverage.
Yeah, we run them once a week.
Okay.
That was their practice.
Useless is too strong, but still not like certainly not continuous integration.
No,
Not
certainly.
even daily build.
And that's interesting because we had talked about. So I went in as the consultant, and we were trying to figure out what was the best way to go. And man, I jumped in there and I saw the data layer, and it's like, I'm going to refactor this with the repository pattern. And so I start building out this repository, and as the deeper I got into it, the deeper I realized there's so much dependency, tightly coupled stuff here. This isn't going to work. So we kind of had to back off on that, and that was about the first month of time. Then we went to CodeMash, and I had gone to the manager. I said, you guys got to go to CodeMash. And so they all went to CodeMash, and I got the whole team to go. And we came back, and a lot of them were, hey, we really need to go with this. And so we got some continuous integration going. We had one guy get set up with cruisecontrol.net, and we started breaking out the tests, and we started getting that going. And we started breaking those dependencies and got things kind of rolling a little bit faster.
When you say breaking those dependencies, tell me about that.
Okay, so we had a dependency that if you opened up a form, it would open this business layer would open up the data layer, and the data layer would go all the way out to the database.
Okay, and retrieve some data from the database.
Right.
And so all the way back up the stack.
Right, and so our tests, in order to test that stuff, we would create a bunch of dummy data, build up start up the business layer to go get that data and then run that test. So that took a really long time. So what we did is we did simple things to start with, and took the constructor, and rather than just immediately creating a new instance of our data layer, we would allow it to pass in or take in as a parameter this data layer. One of the things we had going for us is a previous developer kind of forced them to create interfaces for everything, regardless of whether they needed them or not, but they did at least have interfaces for everything.
So you're describing a version of control or dependency injection?
Dependency injection, yeah, where we were doing it based on the constructor, rather than, using a parameter construction, or we were using parameter construction on that, passing in those new dependencies.
Yeah.
But that allowed us to say, okay, well, here's the business layer, and now here's the data I want you to work with. So now we're looking strictly at that business layer.
All right, so now you don't have this dependency between you don't have a hard dependency between your user interface through all those layers back to the database.
Right.
So what, your tests no longer hit the database?
The tests, right, well, some of them do, right? So we created a series of tests that would test the UI, and the UI tests were really looking at, have we wired up the event handlers? That's all we really care about is this button firing these events? That's all we really care about, because if those events are firing, then these business layer things are going to happen. And if those business layer things happen, well, then I'll have tests for those.
All right, so I'm starting to get a better picture for this. That's all you wanted to test, but the way that was constructed before, the only way you could test that was it had to, because of the hard wiring, it had to go to the database.
Yeah.
And get a bunch of stuff
Right,
that you didn't really need for your test. You weren't even testing that.
Right, you created a form, and it went out and loaded 1,000 records into a grid.
Right. So
Just because
So now you've short-circuited that.
Yeah.
And you've sped up that test considerably.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the real world, the real application that's running, it's still going to have the database, but your tests are running a lot faster because they just skipped that whole piece about looking at the database at all. You don't
Right.
care about it. All right.
Right. So it took us a period of about 2 or 3 months to kind of rework everything. In February, we had our integration server come online. We had 0 tests that were running on the integration server.
Yep.
And it was really cool to watch Cruise Control create that nice graph for us that showed us 0 tests, 100 tests, 500 tests, 1,500 tests. And so about 4 months later, we had 1,500 tests running in about 30 seconds.
From 4 to 5 hours down to 30 seconds?
Right, because we're no longer creating all this data and then destroying the data and then creating it and destroying it. We kept asking, it almost became the mantra, what are you really trying to test? And when we're in the UI, all we're really trying to test is that the business layer is going to get called. When we're in the business layer, all that we're really trying to check is that the data layer is going to call. When we're in the data layer, that's when we want to make sure that SQL Server or Access database, whichever we were working with, was really doing what we wanted it to do.
Right.
Those were the tests that took a while to run, and we didn't run those all the time because we weren't making changes really at the database all the time. It was our business logic that we wanted
Makes
to be
sense.
running.
So you
tests.
still are testing the database, but those are separate tests. Those are
That was a separate collection of tests. Yeah.
okay. All right. Yeah,
So we had our unit tests, and then we had our integration tests, and those, by separating those, we could run those on a nightly basis. And it was great to come in the next morning and be like, oh, we broke something.
yeah,
And,
that quick feedback real fast.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was great to start to see the excitement of the developers who would know, oh, hey, whatever. And what was interesting is because they had multiple products that they were shipping, we were making changes in product B, but our tests were running across product A and B. And so when we broke something, when those tests ran, we would see that, oh, this change that we made in product B is an incompatible change for product A,
I see.
since it was a shared library.
Yeah.
And we'd be able to go back and know that we had broken product A. Almost.
You know that instantly.
We know that instantly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's really nice. So you added a lot of value in a really short time. I have to believe that once they stopped running the tests, that people stopped writing the tests as well, right? I mean, that's got to be discouraging. Why bother writing a test that's hardly going to get run?
No, I think I think we
really
did.
were?
They still wrote the tests, but I don't think that there
certainly
wasn't as much a commitment to writing the tests first. And not that I'll be the first to admit, I am not a test first developer. I am a test infected developer. I won't have code that isn't surrounded by a test.
Right.
But sometimes I let the test come after I've written code a little bit.
Right.
But that's because I see the value of knowing that what I've changed is the right change, and keeping that. So if I make changes later,
Yeah.
I haven't broken anything. So
Very cool. Anything else you want to add?
no,
I think it's a great story. I think it's a way that is rare that as a consultant you can come in and add that much value. I mean, you're talking about a factor of thousands.
Yeah, well, it was one of those great. It was a short 6-month engagement. It was a great group of people to work with, and I guess it's something better than just going in and kind of being the head on the project. To be honest, I didn't write any new code on that because I didn't have any domain knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
But working through those tests and breaking out those tests, I've met 3 or 4 of the developers from the team who have come back and said, hey, it's just worked so much better
That's a
for
great
us.
feeling. Great feeling.
So, it is. It's awesome.
Do you have a presence online you want to promote or anything you want to promote?
I used to blog at geekswithblogs.net, and I actually wore this shirt to kind of force me to get back into it. I've got a lot of stories
you
that I
have
want
to.
to
This
tell.
is going out to, I think we have 75,000 viewers watching tonight.
Great.
I don't know, I made that number up, but still.
Oh.
So pressure's on now. You said that.
Yeah, like I said, I wore the shirt because I wanted to kind of let people know, hey, I do blog, or I should be blogging, and I've got some stories I want to tell, and so I need to get back to that. So
I think you should too.
Geeks
Start
with
with that
Blogs.
story. This is a great story.
geekswithblogs.net/bsherwin.
All right. Thanks very much, Brian.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So one of the best ways to stay up in technology is to always hang out with your friends, and that's what centralohiodata.net is for, is to get out and be with your friends and not always be in every session. Just learn some technology and talk tech with friends.